The Rio Grande is the fifth largest river in the United States and among the 20 longest in the world. Starting high in the San Juan Mountains of Colorado, the Rio Grande River travels 1,760 miles. It runs the entire length of New Mexico and creates the border between Texas and Mexico, entering the Gulf near Brownsville. Along its course, the face of the Rio Grande changes dramatically, from high mountain streams to deep canyons and traveling through agriculture lands, where at times nearly drying up. One of the most significant tributaries to the upper Rio Grande watershed is the Chama River. The Chama starts in southern Colorado, traveling through the town of Chama, and enters the Rio Grande in Espanola. In Colorado, the Chama starts as a high alpine stream, traveling through thick vegetation in wooded forests. The weather here can change dramatically, with intense rain and hailstorms sneaking up without any notice. Farther downstream, below the town of Chama, the river enters deep canyons before meeting up with Heron Lake. Heron Lake is about 4 miles long and 3 miles wide, and lies at an elevation of up to 7,000 feet. Interestingly, Heron Lake is not fed by any rivers. The lake is part of the San Juan Chama project, which transfers water from the upper reaches of the San Juan River through nearly 13 miles of the Azotea tunnels, crossing the Continental Divide. The lake provides stunning views and recreation for fishermen, as well as providing water for agriculture and domestic use. The reservoir is created by a dam 12,000 feet long and 260 feet high, and enters the Chama River through the spillway. Off in the distance of Heron Lake are seen the Brazos Mountains. Running beneath these majestic mountains is the Brazos River. The Brazos is a tributary to the Chama, entering the river just above Heron Lake. It provides excellent fishing for fly fishermen. Farther downstream, the Chama travels through El Vado and Abiquiu Reservoir before entering the Rio Grande in Espanola. After traveling through Colorado and northern New Mexico, the Rio Grande finds the Rio Grande Gorge State Park just after Taos Box Canyon, near the town of Pilar. The Taos Box is a steep gorge with lots of whitewater, but quickly mellows to an easier, gentle river. Here the gorge widens, with high cliffs surrounding the river, and limited vegetation scattering the banks. Here recreation becomes a viable industry, with lots of raft companies taking tourists down the river to enjoy these spectacular views. Though sparse, the banks hold much life, like the swallowtails flying through the thistle. After exiting the gorge, the Rio Grande widens and finds itself in Espanola. Here the bosque begin, with large cottonwoods lining the river, as well as civilization becoming more predominant, and signs of agriculture along the highway. After traveling past White Rock and a big canyon, the Rio Grande River finds itself in Cochiti Reservoir. The reservoir was built primarily for flood control, but serves as a secondary purpose for recreation, for campers and fishermen. Below the reservoir, a series of irrigation ditches begin, which support the agriculture that line the banks of the Rio Grande. Further downstream, the river and bosque widen. Here the river passes through Bernalillo, just before entering Albuquerque. After traveling through Albuquerque, the river continues south through farmlands, where agriculture is heavy, and eventually gets to Belen. In Belen, the mighty Rio Grande is reduced to a trickle, being diverted into many irrigation ditches and canals alongside the river's banks, used for all the irrigation for agriculture. More than 2 million acres of farmland are irrigated along the Rio Grande, with slightly more than half in Mexico. South of Belen, the Rio Grande passes through Socorro, where the river flow begins to increase. The banks are lined with thick foliage, but with all the heavy siltation, the mud is thick along the banks. From Socorro, the river continues southward, providing life for nature and all the people along its banks. Underneath the rocks in the river, life is teeming, which provides food for the fish, like these stoneflies and leeches. Mayflies crawl along the rock and can be identified by their two split tail. Caddis typically build a case to live in. This case is open and we can see the caddis squirming around. This caddis has left its home and is exposed, and soon may be washed down for fish food. Crawdads, though fun to play with, are invasive and can cause problems in the stream's ecosystem. Farther downstream, siltation is heavy and the mud is thick. There's no bugs to be found here.